Well, this happens to me only typically after lunch, that people don't show up. Maybe, as you said, coffee is too tasty. Nevertheless, let's make the best of it. My background comes from almost purely from the capital market. I've been working with NASDAQ for 25 years, moved here only 6 months ago. So I have limited knowledge about the local market. What I did in NASDAQ was product-related development, innovation, and DLT is something that is very close to my heart, but I'm not an evangelist. And the fact that I'm not that comes from the capital market in general. So capital markets are regulated, and everybody knows that after the financial crisis 2008, the regulations just started to pop up, increase, trying to secure the market behaviors, investor behaviors, brokers' behaviors, and specifically the financial market infrastructure providers, such as the exchanges and those that provide clearing and settlement services to the market. So we are regulated by the local regulator called Securities and Commodities Authority. I'm not going to bore you with this information. I just pick a few things from here and there because I want you to understand why we can't rush into new technologies, why we need to test it, experiment it, try to understand what blockchain technology or other technologies can do for us instead of starting replacing the core systems. So from the picture, which I'm sure you don't see much, I'll pick a few figures. The market capitalization of ADX today is about 450 billion dirhams. We have something like 1 million investors that have invested into stocks that are traded in ADX. We are now so-called emerging market status. If you don't know what the statuses are, you can be frontier, you can be emerging, or you can be developed. So just a few years back, we were frontier market. Now we are emerging and hoping to become equivalent to any developed exchange in the world in the coming few years. You see the curve of the index, but as said, I will not go through those. We have significant foreign exposure, so foreign investors are very much present in the Abu Dhabi securities market. And as a matter of fact, we have something like 300,000 pension funds that have invested into the stocks that are traded in Abu Dhabi. Also, we are very much looking to provide e-services, whether they are based on blockchain or other technologies. We have app that you can download free of charge, giving rather good information on the Abu Dhabi market. We have kiosks, which is a typical way to communicate with the government or the governmental entities, where you can do subscription of shares, you can get your balance of your ownership, etc. And further, of course, we have the normal channels in the social media and in the web. So that's about ADX as of today. But why I wanted you to understand that is that I assume that not many of you are based here in Abu Dhabi or that you would know about ADX. And also, and mainly because we hold a huge asset base. I said 450 billion dirhams. We have a huge clientele, which are the investors, 1 million. We have many foreign players that are active in our market. So as a conclusion from that to where we are today, we are looking different technologies, where blockchain technology is one among many others that we are currently either experimenting or try to get an understanding what these technologies are all about. So in that list, you can see a few of them. We are very much interested, for example, in the cloud computing, which can save significant costs. We are interested in even virtual reality, because some of the surveillance and risk management could be actually delivered by virtual reality or augmented reality solutions. And blockchain, obviously, is one of the many that we are looking. But before I go to the next slide, I just want to share some of the information that some of major advisors in the world, such as Accenture, has gathered. So when we talk about technology, everybody should at the same time think about cybersecurity. And if I compare the figures of how much we invest into cybersecurity compared, for example, to blockchain, the difference is huge. And everybody says that blockchain is secured enough. Looking at what the cyber criminals are doing, I can't just take it and believe it. I need someone to prove it to me. And cybersecurity is different to any other technologies that we are investing in, because we are always just trying to catch up. So there's $90 billion spent on cybersecurity every year, and still we are just using that money to catch up with the cyber criminals. So I need to be very sure before I recommend that our core systems, which is the trading system, clearing and settlement and registry systems, would be replaced by a solution that is still in the experimental phase. There's a lot of blockchain evangelists in the room. Everybody has their own business or are part of that business. I appreciate that. I do believe sincerely that blockchain technology is something that will come. It will challenge us. It will compete with us. So we need to understand what that is all about. But we don't rush into it. Also, the other angle is that I'm a business developer. I look how we can improve the businesses. As a matter of fact, the same study made by Accenture said that vast majority of the blockchain investments are made to create efficiencies. Less of it is new in innovation. It's about creating further efficiencies. So-called no-regret investments. And that's what we come from as well. So I'm looking at it from the business development perspective. Do our customers, do the market, how we can support different players, our customers and our own internal processing using different technologies. And their blockchain technology definitely has many angles that we are eager to understand and try to benefit from. So a very simple graph, but just that you know how we approach any technology, and in this case, blockchain technology. We do the experimentation, then we do so-called incubation, and then we can launch it. At the moment, And there's a separate slide, so I will not talk about much of it, but we already have one blockchain-based technology which is on e-voting. And I will explain why it's very clever technology to that business case. But that's still in the experimental phase. We are now moving it into incubation. We need to get feedback from the market. We need to develop further our solution. We need to expose different parts of the value chain to the technology. And then, inshallah, as they say here, we can introduce that and actually have that as a business of ours, where clients can come together and the value chain is as efficient as it can be using the blockchain technology. And same goes to anything else that we do. So what is an e-voting system? As I'm not sure how much you know about companies' general meetings, I will just give a brief example of what the complication is, what's the pain point of today. The pain point is that, and as I said earlier, Abu Dhabi companies, they are international in terms of who owns them. The owners can be anywhere in the world, whether it's in Africa, in Americas, or Asia, or Europe. When you provide services for the general meeting, typically it has been cumbersome to reach the investor because there's a value chain behind it. You have the local custodian that keeps accounts to the global custodian. The global custodian keeps accounts to another local custodian in the origin country, and then it may or may not reach the end investor. And each of these steps, there are either manual processes, and believe it or not, even faxes are still used. So the value chain, the supply chain, if you wish, is actually very complicated, very, very cumbersome, and the corporate governance, the good way of the companies to support and give services to its investors, have been very difficult. With e-voting system based on blockchain, you can create voting tokens, and voting tokens can be delivered then through the same value chain, but since everybody is looking from the one single picture of the database, then the smooth transition from issuing the voting tokens to be reaching the end investor is actually very smooth. And that is all about blockchain to me, that it can create efficiencies. It gives one single proof of who are they in the value chain, and proof that the end investor truly is the end investor, and a very efficient manner to vote into the general meeting. So on top of just reaching and issuing these tokens, the system allows you remotely to vote. You can be anywhere in the world. You can either have a direct access at the moment when the general meeting takes place, or you can pre-vote in the time frames that are given by the company. So that's our first experiment, and we are happy. And our companies are happy. It seems to work perfectly. We need to add some new features to it in order to be using its full power. I picked, for the purpose of this conference, few news from the market. And as you can see, ICOs are now everywhere. So it's all about ICOs. However, many of the speeches today has been talking about other use cases that are not capital market related. But when you talk about capital market, then it's ICOs or cryptocurrency or the combination of the two. So from the capital market perspective, ICOs are in the news very much. And there are some very, very encouraging things happening. For example, the Canadian stock exchange called TMX have now agreed with the Canadian central bank that they will jointly experiment by issuing central bank money into blockchain. That's very encouraging. Singapore has similar attempts. And then something that everybody in the capital market is very, very much looking for and focusing in terms of understanding the matureness of the technology is the Australian Stock Exchange. They plan to replace the whole post-trade systems by blockchain technology. And their timelines have already missed by a year, but they say that by end of this year, which is only a month away, they will decide whether they replace their current system called chess with a blockchain technology system. Very interesting. Everybody is looking for that. On the other hand, we have China, who has been very restrictive lately. They have banned ICOs, they have banned Bitcoins, they have banned this and that. And Bank of England says that, yeah, interesting, but let's wait for a moment. The approach that we have taken as well. So, when we look at the technology itself, we see a lot of opportunities, as I mentioned earlier. It provides us very smooth end-to-end processing. It would democratize the way that assets would be moved from one hand to other, whether that asset is traditional shares or ICOs or cryptocurrencies. One thing that may not be obvious to you, but in capital market it's very clearly one of the most expensive and cumbersome process, it is to reconcile. So with the blockchain technology, we can remove the need for reconciliation. And to give you an example, when we provide information to our brokers of their customers' assets that are registered, the broker gets the information from us, they put it in their internal back office system, we need to reconcile with them. They may have a custodian behind it. They need to reconcile that with the custodian. Custodian provides information and the services to the end investor. They need to reconcile that. So both in terms of securities and cash, we do a lot reconciliation. And with blockchain technology, we can forget that. And then we can forget the burden and the cost of reconciliation. Then I just picked one because of the time. But if I look at the challenges, then main challenge to me is that ICOs are not recognized by the regulators. That is ongoing effort. We can build nice agreement-based structures which are totally valid, but do they look all the aspects of ICOs, for example? They are definitely not regulated even after having a prudent agreement structure behind them because of the nature of the ICO. So ICO is a promise. It's you invest into ICO, which gives you certain access to other assets. It's like pachinko machines in China, where you go to the slot machine, you get coins, and since gambling is not allowed, no, South Korea or China, anyway, that part of the world, you actually take those coins, you go outside from the pachinko parlor, you exchange your coins into a teddy bear or something, and then you use that teddy bear to get actually the cash. So ICOs have some similarities to that. It's not an asset per se, there's an underlying asset that you actually buy. So you could actually argue that ICOs are derivatives similar to futures and or stock options, etc. And that's a tricky thing from the regulator perspective, what ICO actually is. And before that is identified, it's difficult for the financial market infrastructure players to actually start offering services based on the ICOs. We don't have standards. When we talk about blockchain, then we generalize a lot. Blockchain is not one blockchain. We have at least 10 different blockchain technologies, and there are no standards. Interoperability is not there, or it's done by exchanging one type of assets to another. So in the capital market, interoperability is definitely, it needs to be there. Otherwise, the capital market couldn't work. Standards are missing. SWIFT, if we again just talk about capital market, SWIFT is looking for standardizing some of the messaging that is done with the blockchain technology. But what that is still unknown. Anyway, and despite everything, or sometimes just because of all these issues, we have identified certain areas of interest that we would like to experiment. As said, we can't use ICOs as the regulated market service offering. And as I said earlier, ICO is a threat to financial market infrastructure players because you create another very quick, very efficient, very cost-efficient way to issue coins or assets into the market. So we feel threatened. That's why we need to study. But at the same time, we need to find solution that would be what we can deliver to the market, which we see as another type of asset that can be introduced. It necessarily don't need to be an ICO. It can be blockchain-based securities, regulated securities. So, as I said earlier, today's securities, blockchain technology definitely can do the trick. But we can't replace the core system. Thus, what we are looking at is new types of market, such as market for growth companies or SMEs or private companies. We can create an ecosystem where investors on the early stage of investments are looking for the companies to see whether there is an investment opportunity. We have a few examples from the world. For example, NASDAQ did the first private market based on blockchain 2 years ago, and there are new things happening as we speak. So, new type of asset classes is one. Registry keeping, very cumbersome and very good use case for the technology itself. Crowdfunding based on blockchain, definitely on our agenda. From the transaction processing, we have data sharing, again talking about the reconciliation, and KYC process, which is typically very difficult to do. Cross-border transacting, that's a very good use case where markets have a dialogue with each other. And on the other areas, since the blockchain is very good at supply chain, so we could use that as a workflow management system, either intra our company or using it together with our customers. And then payment system and cryptocurrency. So those are the areas that we are currently looking at. So, conclusions quickly. We are very interested in blockchain. We are very interested in ICOs. We actually are part of a global network which is innovatively called CSD Working Group. CSD means Central Securities Depository that manages the post-trade, which now has taken the role of understanding what digital assets are in terms of their nature, in terms of their legal status, in terms of the possible regulation of them. And we have significant parties in the working group. We have Hong Kong Exchange, we have 6 from the Swiss market, we have a few exchanges from the South American side, we have NASDAQ, we have this and that. So it's a rather powerful tool to start studying ICOs and digital assets as a whole. So just to wrap up, this is our interest. My role is to create a digital strategy to ADX. This is based, the presentation has some input to that as well. That's why I come to these conferences, to hear, to listen, and also to share why FMI's financial market infrastructure seem to be a bit slow in getting into that area, but it comes from the fact that I said in the beginning that we hold so huge assets and so many investors' ownership that we need to be very prudent. And then regulators are there, which we collaborate with to give mutual understanding what blockchain is and what ICOs are all about. Okay, that's it. Questions, please?
Hi, thank you for sharing all that info. So I just have one question. You said that ADX is interested in blockchains and ICOs. My question is ADX interested in decentralized cryptocurrencies as well, like Bitcoin? There is a difference, that's why I'm asking this.
Very good question. When blockchain is referred to, many people refer it as disruptive and disintermediation and some other buzzwords. I would call it re-intermediation. Disruptive, yes, but we need to do this together with our customers. So we, for example, talk more about permissioned ledgers, KYC process, so anonymous investor or user base, we can't accept that because of the regulations. If that answered to your question.
So re-intermediation, that's a wonderful takeaway, and thank you very much. We'll have more questions during the lunch break as we have to catch up.
Sure.
Okay, quick question.
All right, thanks for giving me the chance to ask this. Really enjoyed your presentation, and I truly agree with you that if it quacks like a duck and looks like a duck, it's a duck. So cryptocurrencies is not a way to circumvent existing technology, existing infrastructure, sorry. I want to ask if you are fully for private blockchains, or are you open to public blockchains as well? And what's your take on zero-knowledge transactions?
Well, when we talk about public blockchain, we of course need to define it. But public blockchain is fine as long as KYC process has been done. Obviously, we would like to have a role in the public blockchain. And what that role is and how it could be defined, I don't yet know. But it doesn't necessarily need to be private, that's for sure.
So thank you very much, and we'll have more of this ADX during the lunch break.